So we are going to start with what you do when you arrive at a site and how to detect whether or not pikas are present at a site. When you have used your GPS unit to navigate to the GPS coordinate that we've given you, the first step is to determine whether or not there's talus at that site. And talus is large boulders with kind of holes in between. Think of it as places where there are spaces for pika to go down underneath. Things that aren't talus are small boulders like scree that move if you walk on them and don't really have any holes underneath, or boulders that are kind of in a meadow and aren't kind of jumbled up with spaces underneath. So if you arrive at the GPS coordinate that we've given you and you don't see talus right in that area, you should go ahead and look around within about a 200-meter distance and see if you can find a talus patch in that area. The GPS coordinates that you have are from historic sightings of pika, and they're not always going to be exactly accurate. So go ahead and look around and make sure that there's not talus within 200 meters. And then if that's the case, you can go ahead and record that there is no talus at the site, and take a GPS coordinate and mark down the latitude and longitude, and then you're done with your survey. If you do find talus, then go to the talus and try to go to the bottom of the slope where the talus kind of all piles up, so the bottom margin, and look for the largest rocks, and that's where you're going to start your survey for pika and pika sign. So once you're at the toe of the talus patch where the largest boulders are and you're ready to start your survey for pika and pika sign, you need to record the time you started searching for pikas. And this is very important because we want to know the total amount of time you actually spent searching for pikas. So if you don't see a pika right away, it can be different from your arrival time. Sometimes you'll get to the site and you'll see or hear a pika right away, and in those cases your start time can be the same time as your arrival time. So you're going to search until you see a pika, hear a pika, or find a fresh hay pile. So you're going to look for pika actually running around in the talus. You're going to listen for pika calls, which sound like a squeaky toy. It's a short squeaky call. Birds and marmots can also sound like pikas, but their calls are a little bit longer and less squeaky, and you can look at our website to listen to the difference between pika calls and marmot calls. Marmots are the species that you would be most likely to confuse with pika by listening to the call. And then we're also going to want you to search for fresh hay piles. So pika don't hibernate in the winter, and they store up hay to eat over the winter, and so there should be pretty good sized piles of fresh hay underneath the talus. And you want to look for actually organized hay piles that are tucked under the talus. Other species like marmots will clip pieces of vegetation and kind of scatter them around, and those aren't from pika, so we don't want you to use them as evidence of pika. So look for a neat hay pile that's clearly been stacked up and kind of organized in the talus. And then the other thing you want to make sure to look for in the hay piles is for freshness. So you want to look for fresh green vegetation in the hay piles. Hay piles can stay around a long time at a site after pikas are absent, and so you want to make sure that you're finding out whether pikas are present during this year, and so you need the hay pile to be fresh to be certain of that. So you should make sure there's green vegetation in the talus. There can be some old vegetation sometimes because they'll put new hay piles on top of the old ones. Just make sure there's some fresh vegetation there. You're going to stop searching for pika and record the end time of your search immediately after you either see a pika, hear a pika, or find a hay pile. And in a lot of cases, you'll see a pika and you'll hear a pika and you'll find a hay pile, but record the end time right after the first sign that you see. Circle all that apply. So if you saw all three, circle, I saw a pika, I heard a pika, and I found a fresh hay pile on the data sheet. If you don't find a pika, we want you to search for up to 30 minutes. And then if you don't find a pika after searching for 30 minutes, we want you to stop searching. And it's very important for you to know that what we're trying to find out here is if we're losing pikas from sites where they historically were present due to climate change. So it's very important data that you're getting when you go to a site where pikas were present in the past and aren't present now. If there's inclement weather, thunderstorms coming, or if the temperature gets way above 75 degrees, we want you to stop searching for pika at that point. And that's for two reasons. Pika are less likely to be active with really high temperatures and are harder to find, or with stormy weather, and also for safety reasons. We don't want you up in the talus when when there's thunder and lightning. And if you stopped your search for one of those reasons, or for any other reason you got sick and had to go home, we want you to write down the reason that you stopped searching on your data sheet. After recording the reason you stopped searching, you may also note whether you found pika, scat, or old hay piles. And it's very important that you don't put these down as indicators of pika being present at the site. Scat and old hay piles can persist at the site after pikas are gone, and scat particularly can persist for decades after pikas have been absent from a site. Pika scat looks like peppercorns. It's very small, very round, and you'll often find it near hay piles. Pika will also mark rocks with urine, and that kind of looks like a white mark on the talus, and you'll often find urine and scat together in proximity to hay piles. And so if you find those at the site, go ahead and record that you saw them. It tells us that the site is pika habitat and there have been pikas there in the past, even if they're not there at the current date.